Okay, well, we've had 38 last week, and we had 39 this past week gone. So we've had two nearly 40-degree days. Done a little bit more work on over here. Maybe yeah, go around here. Yeah. So I just had to took my sunnies off, so getting the idea. Probably need 150 count water, you know, one in the morning before I go to bed sort of thing, and one at midday sort of thing, and one about now, which I've just done. So I've done another 50 count here to keep it at this sort of, you know, sort of swampy looking thing. Anyway, I put some coir down here underneath here. You probably, if I pull it out a bit, you can see there's the edge of the toilet roll going out to there sort of thing. So the brown rot fungi will go through the white wood and attack the white wood, leaving the lignin. So it will attack this coir here and basically release the lignin, which is a high nitrogen source basically, and it should get darker, almost eventually go almost black sort of thing, you know, very, very dark brown, almost black, and that will be freed up lignin, which is a high nitrogen source. As we've learned, the seeds will only basically germinate on a high nitrogen, a slow release high nitrogen source basically, or in the vicinity where there's some sort of high nitrogen, you know, like there's some lignin on the side, as we learned from the toilet rolls, other experiments. So we may be setting up some more where I put a toilet roll in the bottom of a normal pot, a standard pot sort of thing, and just have coir on the top. So this, I think, is the actual coir revolution that was going on in the middle to late 80s into the 90s sort of thing that I never really told you about, is that you need some white wood there. Whether they were actually putting things like the equivalent to toilet bowl material into some water and having some bubblers going, and then pouring that water so they would accumulate and build up the white, the brown rot fungi, which would, you know, they attack the white wood, and if they go into that things like the coir and PEAT, things like that, they will attack it and release the lignin sort of thing, which is like a fertilizer in a way, a high nitrogen, slow release sort of fertilizer in a way, and that's how you power the plants sort of thing basically. They have a nitrogen source. Yeah. Anyway, so that's what we're going to test out. As I said, we've learned it takes with a normal toilet roll in a very saturated situation, it takes about and not in the ground, it takes about 5 weeks for it to suddenly go that off-white colour, go from that, you know, brilliant bleached white to an off-white colour to like a slightly yellowish colour. Whether it will be faster in the soil, I think it probably will be, because the fungi can come in from the sides, on all sides sort of thing, so it may be fast. So I might water this 3 times a day for a whole month until about the end of January. Then I might put the seeds down, and hopefully we might actually see the coir turn a dark brown, almost a black, and that will be also an indicator that the fungi have come into the toilet roll, gone up through their hyphae and everything else has gone through there, and attacked all the possible the white cellulose material they can get into, and leave the lignin there as a nutrient source for the seeds to germinate on. And the seeds, if they do germinate on this, if it's wet enough for them, they should be a much darker green, they should be more robust, and so on and so forth. So hopefully, and they should, well, they'll get dappled sun. We're on this side of the thing, so the sun comes up there through the day basically, and there it's going down there. So with the fence in the way, bright, very bright shade, as the late Donald Snell used to talk about, bright shade. It's shade where if it was any brighter you could cast a shadow into it, but not In other words, do you understand what I mean by that? That was Donald Snell's gauge, was bright shade. It's in the shade of a fence where you can almost cast another shadow, sort of thing. Not quite, but almost cast another shadow. So anyway, we'll see how that goes. And this will also probably change colours too. This urea formaldehyde, Smithers Oasis floor foam urea formaldehyde. In other words, it's basically a plastic. So basically, we're attacking these things in a way, sort of thing, to release the nitrogen out of them. In this case, you attack the coir and you release the lignin, which apparently comes from the middle lamina of plants. So things like mosses, liverworts and ferns do not have any lignin in them. And if we go back to like sphagnum, which is a moss, doesn't contain any lignin. However, the lignin content of peat apparently is proportional to its salt index, basically. So to its anion and cation exchange capacity, or in other words, salt index in a way. So these sort of materials that have a cation and anion exchange capacity or salt index, the lignin content of these things is proportional to it. So, long story short, I mean, this is a conundrum, how something that starts off with no lignin can actually contain supposedly lignin. So was it an error in the testing? Is there something else in there that's triggering the results saying, oh, there's lignin in this, even though the originating progenitor material, sphagnum moss, that becomes sphagnum peat moss, or sphagnum peat, in the long term, doesn't originally contain any lignin. So how do you get lignin into it? Well, with its cation exchange capacity and salt in it, if you attack something else that has lignin in it and release the lignin, and that lignin happens to flow across or through your sphagnum, that because of that salt cation anion exchange capacity index, it has the ability, I assume, this is an assumption, we can speculate that it has the ability to grab onto that like it's like a salt, and that's how you get your lignin into your peat. It's the sphagnum, because of its specialised cells that give it this sort of this cation exchange capacity salt index. It has the ability to grab onto any released lignin that's going through the landscape, basically, over its life, and latch onto that. And of course, then you've got to attack it with a brown rot fungus to release it again, basically. So, which is what we're attempting to do, and that will help the seeds germinate and grow and become robust, vigorous, with lots of thriftiness, hopefully, if we can keep it damp and wet enough for long enough. Anyway, that's the long story short of it, is I think we've worked out the conundrum of how you can start off with a moss, a fern or liverwort that has no natural lignin in it, and how you can end up with a product like OSMUNDA. See, that's like a New Zealand result of New Zealand ferns breaking down. It's supposedly that has lignin in it as well, but it's a result of a decomposition over time of a fern, which apparently is like sphagnum. Originally it has no lignin in it. So how do you end up with lignin in something like that? Well, apparently it all runs on the same sort of system. Is if you've got lignin in the environment coming from harder woods and things like that, which are being released by your fungi in the soil, it goes through these things that have this sort of apparent cation and anion exchange capacity or salt index, and that just grabs onto the lignin and locks it up again, sort of in a semi sort of permanent high nitrogen form in a way. And you have to go through a process of brown rot fungi again to get it released from those materials, sort of thing. So we'll see, we'll try this out and see what happens. But next few days we'll get on and do our first attempt to going full retard with a bucket of sand and some formula on the top. But that's coming in the next few days, so stay tuned for that. Okay, over and out. See ya.